quite a day for Kamala Harris yesterday, without a doubt. Her fundraising team set a one-day record on Monday, raising more than $81 million in the 24-hour period since President Biden dropped out of the race. Largest single-day total in U.S. history, and by far the largest 24-hour sum reported by either side in the campaign. Now, all of this comes as a wave of endorsements from state delegations has pushed her over the threshold needed to secure the nomination. 1,976 were needed to win the nomination on the first ballot. She has exceeded that at this point and now appears to be at least, do we want to say a lock? I'm not sure yet.
She's a presumptive nominee.
Very much presumptive nominee. So the vetting process is also underway for possible running mates. Senator Mark Kelly, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, among those that have been asked to submit personal information, financial details, and so forth.
Yeah, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as well. We're going to get into some of the dynamics at play there because depending on who's picked, that impacts that state and whatever office they were holding at the time they became the vice presidential nominee. So we'll get into that a little bit later because that could factor into the Harris team's decision. In terms of endorsements, once Nancy Pelosi came out in favor of Kamala Harris, that was it.
Oh, yeah. Then everybody else has to fall in line.
Yeah. Talk about someone who, she's not a speaker anymore. She's not even a minority leader. But talk about someone who still pulls the strings in Washington, D.C. I mean, watching how she has played this whole thing, masterful politics.
Oh, yeah. The way she went on TV and basically said that Biden needs to leave without saying Biden needs to leave.
Yeah, and it's funny. There were a lot of people who, they know how D.C. works and all of that, and they were saying all along, like, Nancy Pelosi wants something. Nancy Pelosi is going to get it. Like, Biden's not going to survive this. It'll be death by 1,000 cuts, and that's where it was headed until he finally got the memo. Time to get out of the race. Now, Democrats, they were willing to make the move to get Biden off the top of the ticket, but clearly they weren't willing to take the risk of doing an open convention. And either option was going to carry some risks. Kamala Harris is not the best candidate to take on Donald Trump. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. But open convention can get messy. You don't exactly know these people who are being vetted for vice president, like Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. You don't know what the vetting process might find. You don't know how they'll perform on the big stage. Again, they look good on paper. DeSantis looked good on paper, and then his campaign flamed out. We've seen that happen time and time again. But it seems to me if you really wanted to beat Trump, if that was your main goal, which, it supposedly is for Democrats, you maybe would have let this process play out a little bit more and then see where you're at.
Well, I'll tell you, Ryan, my father was a history teacher. And one of the things he liked to tell me was just how messy these conventions of the past could get.
Oh, yeah.
When you're talking about a president who wasn't elected until the 165th ballot or something like that. I mean, this generation, we know nothing about a convention like that. So the idea, I think, is to find the best and easiest way to bring the Democratic Party together, unified in the same way that the Republicans are unified behind Donald Trump.
Right, and that's the option they went with. I could make the case that if they had done more of an open convention, the interest would have been through the roof.
Yeah, but I think that would have led to a lot of fighting, and then the party's not unified. And if she raised $81 million in a matter of, 24 hours? So I would say there's some excitement behind her because Democrats were like anyone but Biden.
Yeah, no question about that. The question now is, will she hold up under scrutiny? Because now you've picked the horse you're riding with. So can she do the job and beat Trump? We'll see. There are a lot of questions about Kamala Harris. I don't think she's their best option, but clearly that's who they're going with. And that money, boy, donors were making it rain over the past 48 hours. That just shows you how much pent up demand there was for somebody new. I mean, Biden drops out.
Even though she's not that great.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
It's incredible to see how all of that unfolded.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the $150 million that was raised by the super PAC Future Forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's some bucks going around there.
Yeah, money's not going to be a problem for the Harris campaign.
Well, in the words of one lawmaker, it was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day for Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, facing growing bipartisan. This is really interesting to me.
Yeah, she brought D.C. together. How about that?
Yeah, for her resignation. This is, of course, after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. She declined to get into specifics about how the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, was able to gain access and fire from the roof, which I think was just 150 yards away from the podium. She said it was the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades, and she says she takes full responsibility
but she's
for
not
any
stepping
security
down.
lapse. But really didn't get into details.
No.
And she didn't answer anything.
No, it
Nothing.
was infuriating to watch that. Let's play her opening statement, part of her opening statement real quick. Here's Kimberly Cheatle.
The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed. As a director of the United States Secret Service, I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency. We are fully cooperating with ongoing investigations. We must learn what happened, and I will move heaven and earth to ensure that an incident like July 13th does not happen again.
But the question is, who has faith that you can actually get the job done? Nobody does.
Well, she hasn't figured out what happened because she couldn't answer any questions about a timeline. She couldn't answer if the gunman acted alone. She couldn't answer how many bullets there were.
Nothing.
She hasn't visited the site. She waited 3 days to talk to the officers who surrounded Trump that day. I mean, it's insane.
It was really outrageous.
After question, she just did not answer.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Republican Nancy Mace of South Carolina. Is that one of the pieces of audio that you have?
We'll get to that a little bit later. Here's Florida Congressman Jared Moskowitz on Fox saying that Cheadle doesn't seem to want to take accountability for what happened.
The former president was almost assassinated, and she's saying, well, I'm not going to resign. Well, okay, what I wanted to see is where is that line for her? Had this been successful, would she have resigned? And she still said no. And so what that showed me clearly is that she's not willing to have accountability. What I said to her is, look, if it's not going to be you, then it needs to be the people who made these decisions that led to the failure. So will you commit to firing those people when the investigation is concluded? And she still wouldn't commit to firing anybody. And so at that point, it became clear to me that the person who needs to be fired is her.
Yeah, nobody gets fired in this administration.
No,
Nobody.
it's really insane.
Nobody gets fired. Like, I don't know what, I take responsibility. What does that mean? Nothing's happening.
She's saying I take responsibility, and then she's doing absolutely nothing about it.
And here's Congressman Pat Fallon. This got heated. First of all, he brought up the sloped roof, which she used as an excuse for not having a Secret Service agent on top of the roof to prevent this from happening.
So here's the thing with the slopes. You go all up to like 1812. You can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung.
Yeah, he really demolished that excuse.
He talked for 5 minutes, and everything he said, he just owned her on.
He was heated, and then he mentioned Doritos. Listen to this.
You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful, and you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos.
Because she worked at the Pepsi company for a long time. That was her background, as she did security for Pepsi. So.
Go back to guarding Doritos. Yeah, I mean, they were pissed, members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, and for good reason. So we'll have a lot more on that throughout the course of the morning, including Nancy Mace and some of what she had to say that made headlines. Today's top stories with Reed Shepard. Reed, thanks so much.
Thank you.